The stars had never looked so close. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of Terra's Pride, watching the endless ocean of lights through the main view screen. His ship was humanity's first real attempt to reach beyond their solar system. After decades of preparation, they had finally built something that could travel the vast distances between stars. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the sensors," said So Young from her science station. Her voice carried excitement mixed with worry. "There's a large structure ahead. It's definitely not natural." Hyunwoo walked over to look at her. Readings. The numbers made no sense at first. The object was massive, bigger than any space station humans had ever built. It seemed to be made of materials they didn't recognize, and it was clearly artificial. "Are there any life signs?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Many of them. Different types, too. Like the structure has multiple species living inside." So Young's eyes were wide as she studied the data. "Captain, I think we just found aliens." The bridge went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing to look at the view screen. After all the years of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, the answer was floating right in front of them. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Jin Ho from the communication station. It's in perfect Korean, sir." Hyunwoo felt his heart skip. "Put it through." A gentle voice filled the bridge. "Unknown vessel, welcome to Valari space. We are surprised but delighted to meet you. We have been monitoring your communications and learned your language. Please, do not be afraid. We come in peace and friendship." Tae-min, the security chief, moved closer to his weapons console but didn't activate anything. His training told him to be ready, but his instinct said these aliens meant no harm. There was something about their voice that sounded truly peaceful. "This is Captain Hyunwoo of the human vessel Terra's Pride," he replied. "We also come in peace. We're explorers from the planet Earth." "Humans, what a wonderful name. I am Ambassador Kethmore of the Valari Confederacy. We represent 7 different species who live together in harmony. We have been waiting so long to meet others like us who travel between the stars." Over the next few hours, the two ships moved closer together. The alien station was even more impressive up close. It looked like a small city floating in space, with different sections that seemed designed for different types of beings. Lights of various colors moved through transparent tubes, and the whole structure seemed alive with activity. The first meeting took place in a docking bay that had been quickly modified for human needs. Ambassador Kethmore was unlike anything the humans had imagined. He stood about as tall as a human but was much thinner, with pale blue skin and large, kind eyes. His movements were graceful and slow, as if he had never needed to hurry in his entire life. "Your species is remarkable," Kethmore said as he looked at the human delegation. "Your bodies seem so robust, so perfectly designed for survival." Da-un, the combat engineer, smiled. "Thank you. You seem very peaceful. Your whole station has this calm feeling to it." "We have been peaceful for over 3,000 years, Kethmore replied proudly. "The 7 species of our confederacy learned long ago that cooperation brings more success than conflict." Hyunwoo nodded approvingly. "That's impressive. Humanity has also learned the value of working together, though it took us longer to figure it out." The tour of the Valari station was amazing. Each section was designed for a different species, with different atmospheres, gravity levels, and lighting. The Valari had solved problems that humans were still working on. Their technology was advanced but seemed focused entirely on making life better and more comfortable. "We noticed your ship has some unusual features," said Ythale, a Valari historian who had joined the tour. She was even thinner than Kethmore, with silver skin and eyes that seemed to see everything. "Those projections on the hull, are they sensors?" Taemin glanced at the captain before answering. "Some of them are sensors, yes. Others are defensive systems. Nothing too advanced, just basic protection for a ship traveling in unknown space." "Defensive systems?" Ythale looked confused. "What would you need to defend against in space?" The question caught the humans off guard. So Young spoke. Well, you never know what you might encounter. Asteroids, radiation, hostile, unfriendly life forms. Unfriendly life forms? Kethmore seemed genuinely puzzled. We have traveled these stars for millennia and never encountered any species that was truly hostile. There are some who prefer to be left alone. But hostility? That's very rare. G1, the xenobiologist, was studying the Volari with professional interest. Their bone structure seemed delicate. Their muscles appeared designed for light work rather than heavy labor. They moved like beings who had never needed to fight for anything. Your art is beautiful, Minho said, looking at the decorations throughout the station. The philosopher in him was fascinated by alien culture. These patterns seemed to represent growth and harmony. Yes, exactly, Ythael brightened. All Volari art celebrates life, growth, and the connections between different beings. We believe that creation is always better than destruction. That's a wonderful philosophy, Minho replied. Humans have similar beliefs, though we had to learn them through experience. Experience? Kethmore asked. Well, our history had some difficult periods where we had to learn the hard way that cooperation works better than conflict, Hyunwoo explained carefully. Dong-hyun, the anthropologist, was taking notes on everything he saw. The Volari society seemed almost too good to be true. No signs of poverty, no evidence of crime, no military installations. Even their security seemed designed to help rather than control. Ambassador, Jinho said during a quiet moment, how do you handle disagreements between different species? Surely there must be some conflict sometimes. Of course there are disagreements, Kethmore smiled. When they happen, we talk. We discuss the problem until everyone understands each other. Sometimes it takes days or even weeks, but we always find a solution that works for everyone. The humans exchanged glances. It sounded wonderful, but also incredibly naive. What if talking didn't work? What if someone refused to compromise? As the day went on, the cultural exchange continued. The Volari were fascinated by human art, music, and literature. They seemed particularly interested in human stories of exploration and discovery. But they didn't seem to notice the darker themes that ran through much of human culture. Your music is so energetic, said a Volari musician after listening to some human songs. It has such passion and intensity. Our music is much calmer. Human music reflects our emotions, explained So Young. Joy, sadness, anger, love, all the feelings that make us who we are. Anger? The Volari looked confused again. Why would you want to express anger through art? Because anger is part of life, Taemin said. Sometimes being angry about wrong things motivates you to fix them. The Volari discussed this among themselves in their own language, which sounded like musical whispers. They seemed to be having trouble understanding the concept. As evening approached by ship's time, the humans prepared to return to their vessel. The day had been incredible, but also puzzling. The Volari seemed almost too perfect, too peaceful. It made the humans wonder about their own nature. Before you go, Kethmore said, we would love to learn more about human history and culture. Would you be willing to share your historical databases with us? We want to understand your people better. Hyunwoo hesitated for just a moment. Human history wasn't all exploration and art. There were dark chapters that might be hard for such a peaceful species to understand. Of course, he said finally. Though I should warn you, human history has some difficult parts. We've made mistakes along the way. All species make mistakes, Ythael assured him. We're historians and philosophers. We understand that growth requires learning from the past. Back on Terra's Pride, the human crew gathered in the main conference room to discuss the day's events. They're incredible, So Young said. Their technology, their society, their whole way of life, it's like they've solved every problem we're still working on. Maybe too incredible, Taemin said quietly. Something seems off. They act like conflict is impossible, like everyone in the universe is naturally good. That's not necessarily bad, Minho pointed out. Maybe we're the strange ones. Maybe most intelligent species naturally develop peaceful societies. Or maybe they've just been lucky, Daun suggested. They might never have faced real challenges that required difficult decisions. Hyunwoo listened to his crew debate. They were all good people, smart and dedicated, but they were also humans, shaped by millions of years of evolution on a world where survival meant being strong, fast, and sometimes violent. "What do you think, Jinho?" he asked the historian. Jinho looked uncomfortable. "Sir, they asked for our historical databases. Our complete history includes wars, genocides, slavery, and weapons that could destroy entire planets. I'm not sure how they'll react to learning that humans have killed billions of other humans." "We're not those people anymore," Jiwon said firmly. "Humanity has grown beyond its violent past. We explore now, we learn, we help others. But we still carry weapons on exploration ships," Taemin pointed out. "We still train for combat scenarios. We still think about tactics and strategy, even when we don't." The Valari research station orbiting Serenity Prime was quiet in the early morning hours. Most of the inhabitants were still sleeping, but Yathiel sat in her study, staring at the human data files that glowed softly on her screen. She had been reading for 3 days now, and her understanding of the universe was starting to crack. She began with what she thought would be recent human history, expecting to find records of peaceful development and gradual progress toward spaceflight. Instead, she found something called World War II, which had ended less than 200 years ago. The numbers made no sense at first. 85 million dead. She checked the translation programs 3 times, certain there was an error. 85 million beings killed in a single conflict. The entire Valari Confederacy had never lost that many people to natural disasters in their entire recorded history. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself, but the data was clear. Human armies had fought across entire continents. Cities had been destroyed by weapons that turned matter into energy. Millions of civilians had been systematically murdered for no reason other than who they were born as. But the war before that one was even worse in some ways. World War I had introduced something humans called trench warfare, where millions of soldiers faced each other across fields of mud and death, dying for small pieces of land that changed hands dozens of times. Yathiel's hands shook as she read about chemical weapons, machine guns, and something called the Somme, where humans had died by the thousands every day for months. She searched deeper into human history, hoping to find that these were isolated incidents, terrible mistakes, that humans had learned from. Instead, she found an endless list of conflicts: the 100 Years' War, the Mongol conquests, the Crusades, the Roman Empire, each one involving death tolls that would represent major extinction events for any Valari species. Meanwhile, aboard Terra's Pride, cultural exchanges were continuing. Taeyun was showing her Valari counterpart, an engineer named Silton, around the ship's workshops. "This is where we maintain our equipment," Taeyun explained, gesturing to a room filled with tools and spare parts. "And this section is for emergency repairs during combat situations." "Combat situations?" Silton looked around nervously. "You mean if another ship attacks you?" "Well, that's one possibility. We also train for boarding actions where enemy soldiers try to capture the ship, and explosive decompression scenarios where hull breaches need to be sealed while under fire." Silton stared at her. "You think about all these terrible things that could happen?" "Sure," Daun said cheerfully. "That's how you prepare for them. I've got emergency procedures for 17 different types of ship-to-ship combat, plus 43 scenarios for ground assault support." "Ground assault support? Oh, that's my specialty. I design fortifications and siege equipment. It's really interesting work. You have to think about how to protect people while also figuring out how to break through enemy defenses." Silton looked sick. The idea that someone could spend their time thinking about how to destroy protective structures was completely alien to him. In another part of the ship, Taemin was demonstrating human martial arts to a group of fascinated Valari. What he thought of as a gentle introduction to self-defense was leaving his audience speechless. "This is called Taekwondo," he explained, moving through a basic form. "It teaches discipline and control while developing physical fitness." The Valari, watched in horror as Taemin broke boards with his hands and feet. To them, it looked like he was casually destroying solid matter with his bare body. "Why do you practice breaking things?" asked Morden, a Valari who worked in their equivalent of security, which mostly involved helping lost tourists and organizing emergency evacuations during storms. "It's not about breaking things," Taemin said. "It's about focus and precision. In a real situation, you need to be able to defend yourself and others quickly and efficiently. Real situation? Combat. If someone attacks you, you need to be able to stop them without causing unnecessary harm." The Valari exchanged worried looks. The idea that someone might attack them had never seriously occurred to any of them. Back on Serenity Prime, Ythael was reading about something called the Cold War. For decades, two human nations had pointed weapons at each other that could destroy all life on their planet. They had built thousands of these weapons and spent enormous resources preparing for a war that would end their civilization. But what disturbed her most was that humans seemed to consider this period relatively peaceful because they didn't actually use the weapons. She dug deeper into human culture, trying to understand how beings capable of such destruction had developed art, literature, and philosophy. What she found made everything worse. Human children played games called war games. They pretended to fight each other for fun. Human sports were either direct combat like boxing and martial arts, or simulations of warfare like football and hockey. Even their peaceful games like chess were based on military strategy. Human entertainment was filled with conflict. Their movies showed heroes fighting villains with weapons that would terrify most Valari. Their books told stories of battles, struggles, and violence overcome through more violence. Their news programs discussed military actions, political conflicts, and criminal violence as routine daily events. But strangest of all was how humans talked about peace. They didn't see peace as the natural state of things. To humans, peace was something that had to be fought for, defended, and maintained through strength. Their philosophers wrote about just wars and the warrior's honor. They believed that sometimes violence was necessary to protect the innocent. Ythael found records of human sayings that made her skin crawl. If you want peace, prepare for war. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Evil triumphs when good men do nothing. These weren't the thoughts of primitive savages. These were the beliefs of the same species that had produced beautiful music, profound literature, and the technology to travel between stars. She read about human heroes, expecting to find stories of wise teachers and peaceful leaders. Instead, she found warriors, humans who had killed others to protect their people, soldiers who had died fighting against oppression, leaders who had made terrible decisions to prevent even worse outcomes. Even their peaceful heroes had elements of warfare in their stories. They had fought against injustice, battled disease, conquered ignorance. Human language itself was filled with military metaphors. Aboard Terra's Pride, Jiwan was examining Valari biological samples with growing amazement. Their cellular structure was incredibly delicate compared to human tissue. Their bones were lighter. Their muscles were designed for precision rather than power, and their nervous system seemed optimized for complex thought rather than quick reactions. "You're very different from us," she told her Valari colleague, bioresearcher Velkara. "How so?" Velkara asked. "Well, your bodies seem designed for a much gentler environment. Your bone density is about 1/3 of human average. Your muscle fibers are built for endurance and fine motor control rather than explosive strength. Is that unusual?" Jiwan paused. She was beginning to realize that humans might be the unusual ones. Most humans can lift about 3 times their own body weight in emergency situations. We can run for hours without stopping. Our reaction times are fast enough to dodge projectiles moving at high speed. Why would anyone need to dodge projectiles? The question hung in the air. Jiwan realized that the Valari had never needed to develop quick reflexes because nothing in their environment had ever tried to kill them quickly. In the ship's library, Minho was discussing philosophy with a group of Valari thinkers. The conversation was not going well. "We believe that conflict is the source of growth," he explained. "Through struggle, we learn what we're capable of. Through adversity, We develop strength and wisdom. The Valari looked confused. But why would you want adversity? Isn't it better to live in harmony and learn through peaceful study? Of course peace is better, Minho said. But peace isn't always possible. Sometimes evil people do evil things, and good people have to stop them. Evil people? Minho realized he was talking to beings who had never encountered true malice. People who hurt others for their own benefit, who lie, steal, or kill to get what they want. But why would anyone do such things? If you need something, you ask for help. If you want something, you work for it or trade for it. What if someone refuses to help? What if they have something you need and won't trade for it? Then you find another way, or you do without. What if what you need is freedom from oppression? What if someone is enslaving your people? The Valari fell silent. The concept of slavery, forcing someone to work against their will, was so alien to them that they struggled to understand it. Back on Serenity Prime, Ythael was reading about human religion. Even their gods were warriors. They prayed to beings who fought against evil, who protected the righteous through strength of arms. Human religious texts were filled with battles between good and evil, with the understanding that good had to fight to prevail. She read about something called the Holocaust and had to stop reading for several hours. The systematic murder of millions of people was beyond her ability to comprehend. But what disturbed her more was learning that other humans had fought and the emergency session of the Valari High Council convened in the crystal chamber at the heart of Serenity Prime. 7 representatives from each of the member species sat in a circle, their chairs designed for different body types but all positioned as equals. High Counselor Zephyrin, eldest among the Valari, called the meeting to order with a gentle chime. "We gather today to discuss our new friends, the humans," Zephyrin said, but his voice carried none of its usual warmth. Ythael has completed her initial review of their historical data. What she has found concerns us all. Ythael stood slowly, her silver skin pale with exhaustion. She had not slept in 3 days. "Honored counselors, I must report that humanity is unlike any species we have ever encountered. They are not simply another race that achieved spaceflight through peaceful development." She activated the central display, showing images from human history. The council members gasped. At the first picture, a battlefield from World War I with thousands of human bodies scattered across muddy ground. This is typical of human conflict resolution throughout their history. In their recent past, they engaged in what they call world wars, conflicts that spanned their entire planet and killed tens of millions of beings. Lokthar, the military advisor whose job mostly involved disaster relief coordination, spoke in a shaking voice. "Those numbers, they can't be accurate. No species could sustain such losses and survive." "The numbers are confirmed through multiple sources," Ythael replied. "But this is only the beginning. Humans have developed weapons capable of destroying all life on their planet. They have built thousands of these weapons. They call them nuclear bombs." The display showed footage of atomic bomb tests. The council watched in horror as entire islands disappeared in balls of fire brighter than suns. "They use these weapons on themselves," Ythael continued. "In warfare. On cities full of civilians." Counselor Ethamaven of the Seeker species, beings known for their curiosity and exploration, struggled to speak. But why? Why would any species develop such things?" "Because they were at war. They believed that using these terrible weapons would end the conflict faster and save lives overall. And according to their own analysis, they were correct." The chamber fell silent. The concept that massive destruction could somehow save lives was beyond their understanding. "There is more," Ythael said quietly. "Much more." She showed them images of human cities, human art, human technology. "This is the same species. The same beings who create beautiful music and profound philosophy also wage war with weapons that can crack the surface of planets." Meanwhile, aboard Terra's Pride, the cultural exchange was continuing, but tension was building. The humans were starting to realize that their new friends were more fragile than they had first thought. Jiwan was working in the medical bay when So Young arrived, with disturbing news. I've been analyzing the data on Valari physiology, So Young said. Their bones are hollow like bird bones. Their muscle mass is less than a human child's, and their reaction times, G1, they're incredibly slow. How slow? Average human reaction time to visual stimulus is 0.2 seconds. Valari average is 0.8 seconds. They literally cannot move fast enough to avoid danger. G1 felt a chill. What about their strength? Maximum lifting capacity for a healthy adult Valari is about 30 kilograms. That's less than half what a human child can lift. The two women looked at each other, understanding dawning. We're not just different from them, G1 said slowly. We're built like predators compared to them. In the engineering section, Daun was having a similar realization. She had been explaining her hobby of studying historical siege warfare to Silthan, not understanding why he looked so disturbed. You study how to destroy cities? He asked quietly. Well, more about how to break through fortifications efficiently. It's fascinating from an engineering perspective. Take the siege of Constantinople. The defenders had walls that had never been breached in over 1,000 years. But then the attackers built cannons that could punch through stone like it was paper. You find this interesting? Sure. The problem-solving aspect is incredible. How do you get past defenses that seem impossible to overcome? How do you protect your own people while neutralizing the enemy's advantages? Silthan was backing away slowly. You think about attacking cities, and you think it's fun. Daun suddenly realized what she was hearing in his voice. Fear. Real, genuine terror. Silthan, wait. I don't want to attack cities. I study history to understand how conflicts work. It's academic. But you know how to do it. You have the knowledge to destroy fortifications. Daun couldn't deny it. She did know how to break through defenses. She knew how to design better defenses, too. But that suddenly seemed less important. Back in the council chamber, Ythael was explaining human psychology. They don't just fight because they have to. They seem to enjoy it on some level. Their entertainment consists largely of simulated conflict. Their children play games involving combat. Their sports are either direct fighting or tactical competitions derived from warfare. She showed images of human sports. This is called football. Teams attempt to move an object into enemy territory, while the other team tries to stop them through physical force. This is called boxing, where two humans strike each other repeatedly until one cannot continue. But why? Asked Counselor Mirthon of the builder species. Why would anyone voluntarily hurt another being for entertainment? Because to humans, conflict is natural. They have a saying, competition breeds excellence. They believe that struggling against opposition makes them stronger. Lochthar was studying military reports from their own systems. I've been reviewing our defense capabilities in light of this information. We have patrol ships designed to respond to natural disasters and rescue stranded vessels. Our weapons are meant to clear debris or signal for help. He paused, his voice growing smaller. The human ship Terra's Pride carries more firepower than our entire home fleet. And they describe it as a lightly armed exploration vessel. The council members looked at each other in growing alarm. There is something else, Ythael said. Something that may be even more disturbing. I have been analyzing human language, patterns and cultural references. They think in terms of combat even when they're not fighting. She displayed examples of human speech. They say things like fighting disease instead of treating illness. They battle problems instead of solving them. They conquer fear instead of overcoming it. Their entire conceptual framework is based on conflict and struggle. But they seemed so peaceful when they visited, protested Ambassador Kethmore, who had joined the session. They were friendly and curious. They showed genuine interest in our culture. That may be the most frightening thing of all, Ythael replied. They have all this capacity for violence, all this knowledge of warfare, all these instincts for combat, and they choose to be peaceful. Do you understand what that means? The council waited. It means they are making a conscious decision, every moment not to destroy everything around them. Their peace is not natural, it's controlled aggression. Meanwhile, on Terra's Pride, the humans were having their own disturbing realizations. Donghyun had been studying Valari society with growing amazement and worry. "Captain," he said to Hyunwoo during their evening briefing, "I don't think they understand what they've invited onto their station." "What do you mean?" "They have no concept of actual evil. Their worst criminals are people who take things without asking or tell lies to avoid work. They've never had murder, rape, or assault in their entire recorded history." Hyunwoo felt a cold weight in his stomach. "None at all?" "None. Their idea of conflict resolution is talking until everyone agrees. They can't comprehend that some beings might simply refuse to cooperate or might actively want to hurt others." Tae-min, who had been listening, spoke up. "Sir, I've been analyzing their security measures. They have none. No weapons, no barriers, no defensive positions. Their security forces are basically helpful guides who make sure people don't get lost." "They don't need security," So Young pointed out. "They've never had anything to defend against." "But we do," Tae-min said quietly. "We carry weapons on an exploration ship. We have security protocols for dozens of threat scenarios. We train for combat situations we hope never to encounter." The truth was settling over them like a heavy blanket. Humanity was not normal. They were the violent species, the dangerous ones, the beings who had learned to turn almost everything into a weapon. "Sir," Jinho said carefully, "what do we do if they decide we're too dangerous to associate with?" Before Hyunwoo could answer, the communication system chimed. Ambassador Kethmore's voice filled the room, but it sounded different now. Strained. "Careful. Captain Hyunwoo, the High Council requests your presence at an emergency session tomorrow. We need to discuss the implications of our new relationship." After the channel closed, the human crew sat in silence. "They know," Minho said finally. "They figured out what we are." Back on Serenity Prime, the council session was winding down, but no decisions had been made. They were paralyzed by the magnitude of what they had learned. "We must consider all options," Zephyrin said finally. "These humans may be peaceful now, but they carry the capacity for destruction beyond our ability to defend." The tension in the council chamber was thick enough to cut. Captain Hyunwoo sat across from the 7 representatives of the Valari Confederacy, feeling like he was on trial. His crew stood behind him: So Young, Tae-min, Da-eun, Jin-ho, Ji-won, Min-ho, and Dong-hyun, all of them sensing the change in atmosphere since their arrival. High Counselor Zephyrin spoke first, his voice carefully controlled. "Captain Hyunwoo, we have spent considerable time studying the historical data you shared with us. We find ourselves concerned about the implications." "I understand your concern," Hyunwoo replied. "Human history contains dark chapters that we're not proud of, but we've grown beyond our violent past. Have you?" Ythel leaned forward, her silver eyes intense. "Your ship carries weapons capable of destroying our capital city. You describe this as light armament for an exploration vessel." Tae-min shifted uncomfortably. "Those are defensive systems. We hope never to use them." "But you have them," Lokthar said. "And you know how to use them. Your crew trains for combat scenarios as a matter of routine." The humans exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand the depth of the Valari's fear. "We prepare for dangers that might exist," So Young explained. "It's prudent to be ready for problems you might encounter in unknown space." "What dangers?" asked Ambassador Kethmore. "In 3,000 years of space travel, we have never encountered any species that posed a serious threat to us." "That's because you've been lucky," Da-eun said, then immediately wished she hadn't spoken. The word lucky seemed to emphasize how helpless the Valari were. Meanwhile, on Terra's Pride, the human crew was discovering just how different they were from their hosts. Ji-won had been analyzing biological samples and making disturbing calculations. "The average human is 5 times stronger than the average Valari," she reported to her colleagues. "Our bones are 3 times denser, our reflexes are 4 times faster, and our muscle fiber composition suggests we're built for explosive bursts of activity rather than their steady, efficient movement patterns." We're like tigers trying to make friends with rabbits, Dong-hyun said quietly. Back in the council chamber, the questioning continued. Tell me about your military, Counselor Ethmaven said. Even though you claim to be peaceful, you still maintain armed forces. Every major human government has a military, Hyunwoo admitted, but they're used for defense and peacekeeping. Peacekeeping? Sometimes conflicts arise between groups of humans. Military forces can be deployed to separate the combatants and protect civilians. The Valari looked confused. Conflicts still arise, even in your modern era. Minho tried to explain. Humans have strong emotions and different opinions. Sometimes these differences lead to disagreements that can't be resolved through talking alone. So you use violence to resolve them? We use the threat of violence to prevent greater violence, Hyunwoo corrected. Sometimes the presence of peacekeepers is enough to stop a conflict before it begins. Yathael was taking notes on a device that glowed softly in her hands. How many humans are in your military forces? Across all nations? Probably around 50 million active personnel, with another 100 million in reserves and veteran populations. The number sent a wave of shock through the council. The entire Valari Confederacy had a population of only 2 billion beings across all 7 species. You maintain standing armies of millions of soldiers even in peacetime? Zephyrin asked weakly. Well, yes. You need enough people to respond to multiple crises simultaneously, and military training takes years to complete properly. Lokthar was doing calculations on his own device. Your Earth has a population of 8 billion humans. That means 1 in 50 of your people are trained soldiers. More like 1 in 20, if you count veterans and reserves, Taimin added. Trying to be helpful but only making things worse. The Valari sat in stunned silence. They were talking to representatives of a species that maintained military forces larger than the entire Valari Confederacy, and these soldiers were apparently trained to a level that would make them unstoppable against any Valari force. Perhaps we should discuss your law enforcement, Counselor Mirthon suggested, hoping for better news. How do you handle crime in your society? Well, most human communities have police forces, Jinho explained. They investigate crimes, arrest criminals, and maintain public order. Arrest? Take criminals into custody by force if necessary. Police officers are trained in combat techniques and carry weapons. You give weapons to your peacekeepers? Of course. Criminals might resist arrest or try to harm innocent people. Police need to be able to protect themselves and others. Dayun added, some criminals have military training themselves, so police have to be prepared for serious threats. The council was beginning to understand that human society was built around the assumption that some humans would always choose to do evil things, and that other humans needed to be ready to stop them through force. What about your legal system? Asked Counselor Vexara. How do you punish those who break your laws? It depends on the crime, Minho said. Minor offenses might result in fines or community service. Serious crimes like murder can result in life imprisonment or, in some places, execution. Execution? Killing the criminal as punishment for their crimes. The Valari recoiled in horror. The idea of deliberately ending someone's life as punishment was beyond their comprehension. But why would you kill someone for killing someone? Else, Ethmaven asked. How does creating more death solve anything? The human struggled to explain concepts of justice and deterrence to beings who had never encountered premeditated murder. As the session continued, both sides were coming to uncomfortable realizations. The humans were seeing themselves through alien eyes and recognizing how violent their nature appeared. The Valari were confronting the possibility that their peaceful existence was only possible because they had never encountered true predators. Captain, Zephyrin said finally, we must ask directly. Do humans pose a threat to the Valari Confederacy? Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. Not intentionally. We have no desire to harm your people or conquer your territory. But, you're right that we're dangerous. Every human has the potential for violence. We're trained from childhood to recognize threats and respond to them. We carry weapons, we study military tactics, we prepare for worst-case scenarios. He paused, looking at each council member. The difference is that we choose not to be violent unless we have no other option. But that choice has to be made consciously every day by every human. So Young added, "We've learned through terrible experience that peace is precious and fragile. We maintain strength not to attack others, but to protect peace when it's threatened." Threatened? By what? Kethmore asked. What could threaten peace between rational beings? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as automated systems announced, "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels approaching. Multiple contacts detected." The council members looked around in confusion. In their thousands of years of space travel, they had never heard combat alarms because they had never needed them. Lockthar was reading displays that he barely understood. 17 ships approaching at high speed. "They're not responding to our greetings. Energy signatures suggest weapons charging." Through the chamber's transparent walls, everyone could see points of light approaching the station, ships running dark except for the glow of their engines. "Who are they?" Zephyrin asked. Before anyone could answer, a harsh voice crackled through the communication system, speaking in broken Valari. "Soft things in metal shell. Give us resources or die. You have one time period to comply." The Valari. Council sat frozen in shock. They had no procedures for this situation because it had never occurred to them that someone might simply take what they wanted by force. The humans, however, were already moving. "Taemin, get back to the ship and prepare for combat," Hyunwoo ordered. "So Young, analyze those energy signatures. I need to know what we're facing. Dayun, start planning defensive positions for the station." "Wait," Zephyrin said weakly. "Combat? Surely we can negotiate with these beings." The attacking voice came again. "You have half-time period remaining. Submit or burn." Hyunwoo looked at the council with something like pity. "Counselor, these aren't beings who want to negotiate. They're predators. They've found what they think is easy prey." As if to emphasize his point, the attacking ships opened fire on a small cargo vessel trying to flee. The ship disappeared in a ball of flame. "They just murdered those people," Jiwon said quietly. "Why?" Kethmore whispered. "They could have disabled the ship and taken the cargo. Why kill them?" "Because they want you to be afraid," Minho explained. "Fear makes prey easier to handle." For the first time in their history, the Valari Confederacy was face-to-face with genuine evil, and they were completely helpless against it. "Captain," Lockthar said desperately, "our ships can't fight these attackers. Our weapons are designed for clearing space debris, not combat. We have no military tactics, no combat training, no defensive strategies." Hyunwoo looked out at the approaching enemy fleet, then back at the terrified Valari Council. "Then it's a good thing you have humans here," he said grimly. "Because this is exactly what we were built for." The command center of Terra's Pride had transformed into something the Valari had never seen before. A place where controlled violence was planned and executed with deadly precision. Captain Hyunwoo stood at the central display, his crew moving around him with the fluid efficiency of predators preparing for the hunt. "Enemy analysis complete," So-Young reported from her station. 17 ships definitely hostile. They're using kinetic weapons and plasma cannons. Their armor is thick, but their maneuvering appears crude. "They're called the Devourers," Taemin added, pulling up intelligence files. "We have reports of them from 3 other systems. They attack peaceful settlements, take everything valuable, and kill or enslave the population." Dayun was working at the tactical station with the intensity of someone solving a complex puzzle. "Their formation is designed for intimidation rather than combat effectiveness. They're bunched together probably because they've never faced serious opposition." Hyunwoo nodded grimly. "They're used to easy prey, that's about to change." On the Valari station, the council watched in fascination and growing horror as the humans prepared for war. The transformation was complete and terrifying. These beings, who had been polite, curious visitors just hours ago, had become something else entirely. "How long until they reach us?" Zephyrin asked. 14 minutes, Lockthar replied, his voice shaking. Ambassador Kethmore was trying to maintain communications with the attackers. "Unknown vessels. We are willing to discuss terms for peaceful resolution of this situation. The response was immediate and harsh. No discussion. Submit or die. 10 time periods remaining. They've reduced our deadline, Yithiel observed with academic detachment even as fear clouded her eyes. Through the observation windows, they could see Terra's Pride moving away from the station. The human ship, which had seemed elegant and peaceful when it arrived, now looked like what it truly was, a weapon of war preparing to strike. They're leaving us, someone whispered. But Minho, who had remained on the station, shook his head. No. They're positioning themselves between you and the enemy. Captain Hyunwoo won't abandon civilians. Aboard Terra's Pride, the final preparations were complete. All crew to combat stations, Hyunwoo announced over the ship's communication system. We have 17 hostile vessels approaching a defenseless civilian station. Our mission is to neutralize the threat and protect the innocent. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. These are confirmed hostile actors with a history of murdering civilians. So Young was monitoring communications. Captain, the Devourers are demanding complete surrender of the station and all resources. They're requesting that the Velari turn over a portion of their population as slaves. The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then Taimin spoke, his voice cold as space itself. Not while we're here. No, Hyunwoo agreed. Not while we breathe. The approaching enemy fleet was beginning to spread out as they neared the station. They were moving with the confidence of predators who had never encountered effective resistance. Enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 3 minutes, Dawn reported. Recommend we engage while they're still in tight formation. Agreed. So Young, open a channel to the enemy fleet. Channel open, sir. Hyunwoo's voice carried across space to the Devourer ships, calm and steady. Attacking vessels, this is Captain Hyunwoo of the Terran vessel Terra's Pride. You are threatening civilians under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response came quickly, filled with alien laughter. 1 small ship against 17? You amuse us, soft thing. Surrender now and we will kill you quickly. I tried to warn them, Hyunwoo said. Quietly, then raised his voice. All stations engage the enemy. Show them what humans do to those who threaten the innocent. What happened next was not a battle. Battles imply that both sides have a chance of winning. Terra's Pride moved through space like a dancer, but one whose every movement was designed to deal death. Her weapon systems, which the Velari had barely noticed, revealed themselves as instruments of precise destruction. The lead Devourer ship simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons fire that struck with impossible accuracy. The second ship managed to return fire, but its shots passed harmlessly through space where Terra's Pride had been moments before. How are they moving like that? One of the Velari observers gasped. Minho, watching from the station, tried to explain. Human pilots train for 3-dimensional combat in zero gravity. Every human child plays games that teach spatial thinking and rapid response. Captain Hyunwoo has been preparing for this kind of fight his entire life. The Devourer fleet was trying to surround the human ship, but they might as well have been trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Terra's Pride was everywhere and nowhere, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before return fire could find her. But what truly amazed the Velari was the precision of the human attack. Despite the fury of the combat, Terra's Pride never once fired toward the station. Every shot was calculated to avoid any possibility of hitting civilians. Enemy count down to 12 ships, Taemin reported. They're trying to break off and target the station directly. Negative, Hyunwoo replied. Daeun put us between them and the civilians. Already there, sir. 3 Devourer ships broke away from the main group and charged toward the station, apparently deciding that if they couldn't defeat the human ship, they could at least complete their original mission of terrorizing civilians. They never made. Terra's Pride appeared in their path like an avenging angel, her weapons reaching out to touch each attacking ship simultaneously. The precision was inhuman. 3 separate targets engaged and destroyed in the span of heartbeats, while the ship continued to evade fire from the remaining fleet. Aboard the station, Yithiel was recording everything with the detached fascination, of a scientist studying a new form of life. They're not just fighting, she observed to her colleagues. They're protecting. Every decision, every maneuver is calculated to keep us safe. On Terra's Pride, the crew worked with the smooth coordination of a machine designed for one purpose: the projection of controlled violence in defense of the innocent. 8 enemy ships remaining, So Young reported. They're trying to retreat. Hyunwoo considered this. The immediate threat to the station was over, but these ships would just find other victims if allowed to escape. Pursuit course, he ordered. We finished this here. What followed was not combat but execution. The Devourer ships had been designed to prey on the weak and helpless. Against an opponent that was stronger, faster, and infinitely more skilled, they were nothing but targets. When it was over, the space around the station was filled with debris that had once been 17 ships full of beings who had chosen to make their living by causing pain and death. All enemy vessels destroyed, Taemin reported. No human casualties. Station is secure. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then, Hyunwoo spoke. Good work, everyone. So Young scanned for survivors in the debris field. Sir, these beings just tried to kill us and enslave the Valari. Yes, they did. But we don't leave people to die in space, even our enemies. It's what separates us from them. Back on the station, the Valari Council sat in stunned silence, watching the human ship moving through the debris field, searching for survivors to rescue. They won, Kethmore said quietly. 17 ships and they won without taking a single casualty. It wasn't even close, Lockthar observed. The Devourers never had a chance. Zephyrin was studying the tactical recordings. The humans could have destroyed the enemy fleet in half the time if they hadn't been concerned about our safety. Every maneuver, every shot placement was designed to protect us. Ythael looked up from her notes. Do you see what this means? The council waited. The most dangerous species we've ever encountered just risked their lives to save ours. They could have let the Devourers attack us, then negotiated with the survivors for whatever they wanted. Instead, they chose to fight. Minho, who had been listening from his position near the observation windows, spoke quietly. That's what humans do. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. It's not just what we're good at. It's who we are. An hour later, Captain Hyunwoo stood once again before the Valari High Council. But the atmosphere had changed completely. Where before there had been fear and suspicion, now there was something like awe. Captain, Zephyrin began, we owe you an apology. And our lives. No apology necessary, Counselor. We did what any decent beings would do when faced with such a threat. No, Ythael said firmly. Any decent beings would have wanted to help. Only humans could have actually done it. She stood and addressed the council. I have completed my analysis of humanity. Yes, they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. But they are dangerous in the way a guard dog is dangerous. A threat to those who would do harm. A protector for those who need protection. Kethmore nodded slowly. The Devourers have been terrorizing this sector for years. Our peaceful approaches failed completely. In less than an hour, you solved a problem we couldn't handle in 3 years. We solved it the only way it could be solved, Hyunwoo replied. Some beings choose evil. When they do, good beings have to be strong enough to stop them. So Young, who had joined the meeting, added, We've learned through hard experience that peace is